The transport shuttle's doors opened with a hiss, and Private Hannah Park stepped onto the landing platform of Frontier Station Epsilon 7. She carried a standard military duffel bag over one shoulder and wore the brightest smile anyone had seen in months. The station was a gray industrial fortress floating in the darkness of space, designed for war rather than comfort. Most new recruits arrived looking nervous or trying to appear tough. Hannah looked like she had just arrived at summer camp. Commander Velther watched from the observation deck above, his forearms crossed in a gesture that his species used to show curiosity. The Quarian officer had led the 43rd Xeno Defense Squadron for 8 years and had seen hundreds of human soldiers pass through his unit. Something about this one seemed different. She was small even by human standards, maybe 5 feet and 3 inches tall, with her dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. She waved enthusiastically at the deck crew, as if greeting old friends. Lieutenant Doyen Kim met her at the platform entrance. He was a veteran of 6 years, with the tired eyes of someone who had seen too much combat. He extended his hand formally. Hannah shook it with both of hers, her grip warm and her smile unwavering. "Private Park reporting for duty, sir," she said cheerfully. Doyen blinked. Most privates were stiff and formal during their first meeting with a superior officer. This one acted like they were meeting for coffee. "Welcome to Epsilon 7, Private. I'll show you to your quarters and introduce you to the squad." As they walked through the station's corridors, Hannah commented on everything with genuine interest. She asked about the alien script on the walls, complimented the efficiency of the lighting system, and even stopped to admire a viewport showing the distant nebula that the station orbited. Doyen found himself relaxing despite his usual reserve with new recruits. The barracks housed a mixed group of humans and aliens. The 43rd Squadron prided itself on being one of the most diverse units in the Galactic Coalition military. When Doyen brought Hannah in, conversation stopped. Everyone studied the newcomer. Everyone, this is Private Hannah Park, should be joining 2nd Squad. A young human soldier with messy black hair approached immediately. Private Minho Choi had only been with the unit for 4 months himself and still remembered feeling like an outsider. "Hey, I'm Minho. Don't worry. Everyone here is pretty cool once you get to know them." Hannah beamed at him. "I'm so happy to meet you. I've read so much about multi-species units. It's amazing to finally be part of one." Corporal Jiwan Lai, the unit's medic, watched from her bunk with analytical eyes. She was 32, calm and practical, with short hair and a no-nonsense attitude. Something about Hannah's enthusiasm seemed almost performative, but Jiwan kept that observation to herself. Over the next few days, Hannah completed her orientation with perfect scores. She aced the written tests, memorized station layouts instantly, and could recite emergency procedures without hesitation. But during the physical combat simulations, something strange happened. When the training computer activated target drones for the shooting exercise, Hannah hesitated. Her finger hovered over the trigger of her pulse rifle for several seconds before she finally fired, missing the first 3 targets completely. "Are you all right, Private?" Doyen asked after the simulation ended. Hannah looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry, Lieutenant. It's just, even though they're just drones, destroying things feels wrong." I know that sounds silly for a soldier. Doyen didn't know what to say. He had never heard a soldier express concern about shooting training drones. That evening, Hannah appeared in the mess hall with a large container. The smell of fresh-baked cookies filled the room, an aroma that seemed impossible in a military station. She had somehow convinced the mess officer to let her use the food processors to bake. "I made cookies for everyone," she announced. "I thought it would be a nice way to say thank you for being so welcoming." The human soldiers exchanged glances. The alien troops looked confused. But when Minho tried one and declared it delicious, Others cautiously approached. Soon, even the most hardened veterans were accepting cookies from the small, smiling private. A Quarian sergeant who had served for 20 years found himself holding a cookie in one of his 4 hands, completely baffled by the situation. "Your species is very strange," the sergeant told Doyan later. "But these ... cookies are acceptable." Commander Velther observed all of this from his office. He reviewed Hana's file repeatedly, finding nothing unusual except for one detail. Her service record showed her education ending at age 18, but she had only enlisted at age 25. 7 years were simply listed as civilian life with no details. It was unusual, but not impossible. Many humans took time before joining the military. During the next tactical briefing, the squadron gathered to discuss increasing tensions with the Krellian Empire. The Krellians were a warrior species who had been raiding coalition territories for months. Intelligence suggested a major offensive was being planned. Commander Velther displayed holographic maps of the contested border zones. "The Krellians are becoming bolder. We must be prepared for engagement at any time." Hana raised her hand politely. Velther nodded at her. "Double quote, sir. Have we tried diplomatic channels? Maybe if we understood their cultural reasons for the raids, we could find a peaceful solution." The room went silent. Several soldiers stared at her in disbelief. The Krellians had killed thousands of coalition civilians in their raids. An old Quarian sergeant stood up abruptly and walked out without saying a word. Velther heard him mutter something in his native language that roughly translated to "soft humans." But Velther had been watching Hana's face carefully when she asked her question. For just a fraction of a second, before her warm smile had returned, he saw something else in her eyes. Something cold and distant, like ice covering a deep ocean. Then it was gone, replaced by her usual cheerful expression. That night, Velther couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about that momentary change in Hana's eyes. He had seen enough combat to recognize certain looks. Fear, anger, determination, he knew them all. What he had glimpsed in Hana's eyes was something different. It was the look of someone who had already seen the worst that war could offer and had survived it. He pulled up her file again, staring at that 7-year gap. His instincts told him there was something important hidden there. Something that explained why a soldier who baked cookies and worried about shooting drones had eyes that occasionally looked like they belonged to someone much older and much more dangerous. In her quarters, Hana lay in her bunk, staring at the ceiling. Minho had asked her earlier about where she grew up, and she had given her practiced answer about a quiet colony world. It wasn't technically a lie. The colony had been quiet. After the massacre, it had been very quiet indeed. She closed her eyes and forced herself to breathe slowly. The therapists had taught her techniques to stay calm, to maintain the persona, to be the person she wanted to become, instead of the person she had been forced to be. She could do this. She could be normal. She could be Hana Park, the friendly private who baked cookies, and leave Phantom 7 buried in classified files where that ghost belonged. But deep down, in a place she tried not to acknowledge, a small voice whispered that ghosts never stayed buried forever. The alarm cut through the morning, quiet like a knife. Hana jerked awake, her heart pounding, momentarily confused about where she was. The barracks lights snapped on automatically as the emergency alert echoed through the station speakers. All personnel to battle stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Soldiers scrambled from their bunks, grabbing uniforms and equipment with practiced speed. Hana moved quickly, her training taking over as she pulled on her combat gear. Beside her, Minho fumbled with his armor clasps, his hands shaking slightly. She helped him secure them without being asked. "Thanks," he muttered, looking embarrassed. "We take care of each other," she said with a small smile. In the briefing room, Commander Valther S. expression was grim. A holographic display showed a mining colony in the outer territories, its distress signal flashing red. A civilian mining operation has sent an SOS. They report being attacked by Krellian raiders. At least 3 civilian transport ships are under fire. We're the closest unit. 2nd and 3rd squads will deploy immediately. Doyon stepped forward. Rules of engagement, sir? Protect the civilians. Drive off the raiders. Use necessary force. Necessary force. The words hung in the air. Everyone knew what that meant in practice. The squadron loaded into 2 combat shuttles. Hannah strapped herself into her seat, checking her pulse rifle for the 3rd time. Her hands were steady, but her face was pale. Across from her, Jiwan watched with her usual careful attention. First real combat? Jiwan asked quietly. Hannah nodded. I've done simulations, but this is different. It is, Jiwan agreed. Stay close to your squad mates. Follow orders. You'll be fine. The shuttle ride took 20 minutes. Through the viewport, they could see the mining colony, a collection of industrial platforms attached to a large asteroid. Smoke poured from several structures. In the distance, 3 sleek Krellian attack ships circled 2 defenseless civilian transports, like predators around wounded prey. 30 seconds to drop, the pilot announced. Hannah's breathing quickened. She closed her eyes briefly, her lips moving silently. Minho thought she might be praying. The shuttle touched down on the colony's main platform. The rear hatch dropped open, and the squad poured out. Immediately, weapons fire erupted from the left. Green plasma bolts streaked past, one hitting the shuttle's hull with a sharp crack. Contact left. Take cover. Doyon shouted. The squad scattered, diving behind cargo containers and equipment. Hannah found herself pressed against a metal crate next to Minho. Her rifle felt impossibly heavy in her hands. Across the platform, Krellian soldiers advanced in formation. They were tall, heavily armored, with faces hidden behind helmets that made them look insect-like. Return fire. Return fire. Doyon ordered. The air filled with the sound of weapons. Pulse rifles cracked, plasma weapons hissed, and somewhere someone screamed. Minho leaned around his cover and fired several shots. Beside him, Hannah remained frozen, her rifle pressed against her chest. Hannah! Shoot! Minho yelled. She didn't move. Her eyes were wide, locked on the approaching Krellian soldiers. Her finger rested on the trigger, but wouldn't squeeze. A Krellian broke from their formation, charging directly at Minho and Hannah's position. Minho fired, but his shots went wide. The Krellian raised his weapon, aiming directly at them. Minho pushed Hannah down and tried to shield her with his body. The plasma bolt caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He collapsed with a cry of pain. Minho! Hannah dropped her rifle and grabbed him, pulling him behind better cover. Blood soaked through his uniform, where the plasma had burned through his armor. The Krellian advanced for a kill shot, but Doyon appeared from the side, putting 3 rounds center mass. The alien soldier went down hard. Get the wounded back to the shuttle. Doyon ordered. Somehow, Hannah half-carried, half-dragged Minho toward the extraction point. He was twice her size, but adrenaline gave her strength. Other wounded were being pulled back as well. The Krellians were retreating to their ships, having taken heavy casualties. By the time the shuttles lifted off with the civilians, 6 coalition soldiers were wounded, and 2 Quarian soldiers were dead. The squadron had won, but the cost was clear on every face. Back in the medical bay, Hannah worked alongside Jiwan to treat the wounded. Her hands, which had frozen during combat, were now completely steady as she cleaned wounds and applied medical patches. She moved with surprising efficiency, knowing exactly which supplies were needed before Jiwan even asked. You have good instincts, Jiwan observed, watching Hana carefully suture a deep cut on a soldier's arm. I did some medical training before, Hana said quietly. I wanted to help people. Minho's wound wasn't life-threatening, but he would need several days of recovery. When he woke up from the pain medication, the first thing he saw was Hana sitting beside his bed. Hey, he said grudgingly. I'm so sorry, she whispered. You got hurt because I froze. I couldn't. It's okay. First combat is scary. My first time, I threw up in my helmet. She tried to smile, but couldn't quite manage it. You were very brave. Over the next week, Hana visited every wounded soldier daily. She brought small gifts, handmade cards with drawings, and spent hours just sitting with people who needed company. The squadron noticed. Even soldiers who had mocked her after the battle found it hard to maintain their criticism when she showed up with a carefully folded origami crane and genuine concern in her eyes. But the incident had marked her. Rumors spread through the unit. The soft human couldn't fight. Some alien troops questioned why humans sent soldiers who wouldn't shoot. Others defended her, pointing out that she had saved Minho's life and helped treat the wounded. Gaoyun filed a report with Commander Velther expressing concerns about Hana's combat readiness. Velther read it carefully, then pulled up Hana's training scores again. Perfect marks on everything except live combat exercises. And that 7-year gap in her history that he still couldn't explain. That night, he found Hana in the training room at 3 in the morning. She stood in the center of the empty space, staring at the weapon racks on the wall. She didn't move, just stood there completely still, as if the weapons were something she was afraid to approach. Velther watched from the doorway for several minutes before quietly leaving. She never noticed he had been there. Ji-Yuan, meanwhile, made a disturbing discovery. As the unit's medic, she had access to all personnel medical files for treatment purposes. While updating Hana's records after a routine physical exam, she noticed something odd in the genetic markers. Certain patterns appeared in Hana's DNA that Ji-Yuan had only seen once before, in a classified medical journal article about discontinued military programs. Genetic enhancement markers. Signs of deliberate modification for increased strength, faster reflexes, improved healing. Programs that had supposedly been shut down decades ago because of ethical concerns. Ji-Yuan sat in her office, staring at the data on her screen. Why would a private who baked cookies and froze in combat have military-grade genetic enhancements? She considered reporting it, but hesitated. Hana had been nothing but kind to everyone. There had to be an explanation. Minho, recovering in his bunk, thought about the battle differently. He remembered the moment before Hana had frozen. For just a second, he had seen her face clearly. She hadn't looked scared. She had looked ... sad, like someone being forced to watch something terrible that they had seen before. And then, when she had dragged him to safety, he remembered something else. She had lifted him like he weighed nothing, carried him over her shoulder, and run without seeming to strain at all. At the time, he had assumed it was adrenaline. Now, thinking back, he wasn't sure. Late at night, unable to sleep, Minho walked past the training room and saw a light on. Through the small window in the door, he saw Hana. She was disassembling a pulse rifle with her eyes closed, her fingers moving with mechanical precision, taking apart the weapon and putting it back together in less than 30 seconds. Then she did it again, and again. Minho watched for 10 minutes. She never opened her eyes, never hesitated. Her hands knew exactly where every component was, how it fit, how it moved. He had seen master armorers work slower. He backed away from the door quietly, his mind racing. He didn't know what he had just witnessed, but one thing was clear. Private Hana Park, the sweet girl who couldn't fire at enemies, and worried about hurting drones. Knew weapons better than soldiers with 10 years of experience. Something didn't add up. And Minho had the growing feeling that when the truth came out, it would change everything. Commander Velther had lived long enough to trust his instincts. And his instincts were screaming that something was wrong with Private Hannah Park's file. A contradiction was too obvious. A soldier who performed perfectly in every test except actual combat, who had genetic enhancement markers, but behaved like someone who had never seen violence, who knew weapons intimately, but hesitated to use them. He submitted a formal request to Human Defense Command for access to Hannah's sealed records. The 7-year gap in her history had to contain answers. In his 12 years serving alongside humans, Velther had learned they were a species of extremes, capable of both extraordinary kindness and shocking violence. But Hannah seemed to embody only one side of that nature, and it didn't match the evidence. The response came within hours, which was unusual. Military bureaucracy normally took days or weeks. The message appeared on his secure terminal in bright red letters. Request denied. Clearance level insufficient. Do not pursue this matter further. Private Park's records are sealed by order of Human Defense. Command, Office of Special Operations. This is your only warning. Velther stared at the message for a long time. In his entire career, he had never seen a response like this for a simple private service record. The tone wasn't bureaucratic, it was threatening. And it confirmed that whatever was in Hannah's past, it was significant enough that powerful people wanted it buried. He looked up to see 2 humans in plain, gray uniforms standing in his doorway. They wore no rank insignia, no unit patches, nothing to identify them. Intelligence officers, or something similar. Commander Velther, the taller one said. We need to discuss Private Park. Who are you? That's not important. What's important is that you understand Private Park is here as part of a special program. Her presence in your unit serves a specific purpose, and your investigation threatens that purpose. Velther's 4 arms crossed in a defensive posture. I am responsible for every soldier in this squadron. If there's something about Private Park that affects unit safety, I have a right to know. The shorter officer stepped forward. Private Park is no threat to your unit. Quite the opposite. The program she's part of is designed to help her, and questioning her presence only makes that harder. We're asking you, politely, to stop digging. After they left, Velther felt even more suspicious. If Hannah was truly just a normal soldier in a rehabilitation program, why send intelligence officers to shut down questions? Why seal her records at the highest level? The next day, the squadron gathered for a tactical briefing. Intelligence had detected unusual Krellian fleet movements near the border. Velther displayed sensor data, showing patterns that suggested the raiders were planning something larger than their usual attacks. Hannah sat in the back, as she usually did, paying attention but not contributing, until Velther showed a specific formation captured by long-range sensors. Based on these positions, Velther explained, we believe they're staging for a supply raid on civilian convoys. No, Hannah said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. She blushed under the attention, but continued. That's not a supply raid formation. That's a Krellian honor guard pattern. See how the heavy ships are positioned at the cardinal points with smaller vessels in a rotating screen? They only use that for protecting high-value targets or important leaders. This might be a diplomatic mission, or someone very important is traveling. The room went silent. Velther studied the display again. She was right. He had missed it, but now that she pointed it out, the pattern was clear. How do you know Krellian military formations? He asked carefully. Hannah looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. I read about them. During my training. I find military history interesting. But that explanation didn't satisfy anyone. Basic military training didn't cover alien honor guard formations in that kind of detail. That was specialized intelligence knowledge. After the briefing, Doyan approached Hannah in the corridor. His expression was serious, almost worried. "Hannah, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." She stopped walking, her shoulders tensing. "Okay, what did you do before you joined the military? During those years between your education and your enlistment?" Her face went pale. I lived on a colony. I worked normal jobs. Nothing special. Hannah." Doyan's voice was gentle but firm. "I've been a soldier for 6 years. I know when someone is hiding something. You don't have to tell me everything, but if there's something that affects your ability to serve, I need to know. Not to get you in trouble. To help you." Tears formed in her eyes. "Please, Lieutenant. Please just let it go. I'm trying so hard to be normal. I'm trying to be the person I should have been. If you start asking questions, they'll take me away. Please." Doyan had no idea what to say. The fear in her voice was real, but what was she afraid of? Jiwan, meanwhile, had done more research into the genetic markers she had found. She discovered that the enhancement program had been called Project Phantom. It had been designed to create soldiers capable of operating behind enemy lines for extended periods with minimal support. The program had been officially discontinued 30 years ago after psychological problems emerged in the subjects. Most of the enhanced soldiers had died in combat or suffered complete mental breakdowns. When Jiwan searched for more information about Project Phantom, most files were sealed. But she found one reference in an old medical journal. It mentioned that survivors of the program often struggled to reintegrate into normal society because the psychological conditioning that made them effective in combat made them unable to function in peaceful situations. The article described symptoms: hypervigilance, emotional suppression, difficulty forming connections, and a tendency to create alternative personas as coping mechanisms. One thought about Hannah's constant cheerfulness, her excessive kindness, the way she seemed almost too friendly, like someone performing what they thought normal behavior looked like. And she thought about Minho's description of Hannah disassembling weapons with her eyes closed. That night, Jiwan found Hannah in the mess hall, sitting alone with a cup of tea. She sat down across from her. "I need to tell you something," Jiwan said. "And I need you to know that I'm your friend, no matter what." Hannah looked up, her eyes guarded. "I saw your genetic markers. I know you have military enhancements. I'm not going to report it, and I'm not going to ask questions you don't want to answer. But I want you to know that if you ever need someone to talk to, someone who won't judge you, I'm here." Hannah's hands trembled around her teacup. "I just want to be normal," she whispered. "I just want to be a regular person who has friends and drinks tea and DOESN, single quotes tea, ... quotes." She stopped, unable to finish the sentence. "Doesn't what?" Jiwan asked gently. "Doesn't remember." Hannah wiped her eyes. "Every night, I remember things I wish I could forget. And every day, I pretend to be someone who never lived through those things. The doctors said it would get easier. They said if I could just be normal long enough, maybe the person I'm pretending to be would become real." Commander Velther had made a decision. He didn't care about warnings from intelligence officers or classified orders. His responsibility was to his squadron, and he needed to know the truth. Using his command codes and some creative interpretation of security regulations, he broke through the encryption on Hannah's file. What he found shocked him in ways he hadn't anticipated. The file opened with a warning in large red text: "Classified Omega Black. Unauthorized access punishable by military tribunal." Below that, a service record that bore almost no resemblance to the smiling private who baked cookies. Subject: Park Hannah. Operative Designation, Phantom 7. Service, Human Special Operations Division. Experimental Warfare Unit. Age at recruitment, 15. Genetic enhancement, full combat package. Psychological conditioning, Level 5 deep program. The list of operations ran for pages. 47 confirmed missions behind enemy lines. Target eliminations, intelligence gathering, sabotage operations. Each one marked as successful. Each one deadly. Then Velther found the incident report that had ended her. Operational career. Battle of Crying Moon. Human Special Operations Team ambushed by Krellian elite warriors. 12 operatives deployed. 11 killed in action. 1 survivor. Phantom 7. Survivor recovered 3 weeks later, suffering from severe psychological trauma, malnutrition, and exposure. Enemy casualties. 47 Krellian soldiers, killed by survivor during escape and evasion period. Psychological evaluation. Recommended immediate discharge due to severe PTSD, dissociative episodes, and complete breakdown of combat conditioning. Subject exhibits extreme distress when required to engage in violence. Paradoxically, maintains enhanced combat abilities, while being psychologically unable to employ them without triggering traumatic responses. Recommendation: experimental civilian reintegration therapy. Place subject in normal military unit to relearn peaceful behavior under observation. Monitor closely, but do not reveal history to unit members to allow authentic social integration. Velther read the entire file 3 times, trying to reconcile the soldier described in these reports with the young woman who brought flowers to injured troops and worried about shooting training drones. Hana wasn't a naive recruit trying to become a soldier. She was a weapon trying to become a person. Before Velther could decide what to do with this information, every alarm in the station began blaring at once. His terminal flashed with emergency alerts. He pulled up the tactical display and felt his blood run cold. A Krellian assault fleet had just emerged from hyperspace. Not a raiding party. A full battle fleet. 50 warships heading directly for Station Epsilon-7. It was the largest attack force seen in a decade, and they were vastly outnumbered. The station shook as the first Krellian missiles struck the outer shields. Red emergency lights bathed the corridors in blood-colored shadows. Soldiers ran to battle stations, their faces showing the fear that came with facing impossible odds. Commander Velther stood in the command center, watching the tactical display with growing dread. 50 Krellian warships surrounded the station in a perfect siege formation. His forces had 6 patrol ships and the station's defensive weapons. They were designed to handle raids, not a full-scale assault. Shields at 70% and dropping, an officer reported. Multiple hull breaches on outer decks. Damage control teams responding. Velther opened the station-wide channel. All hands, this is the commander. The Krellians have committed their full strength to this attack. We are outnumbered, but we will not surrender. Every position must be held. Every corridor must be defended. Today, we show them that this station does not fall. It was a good speech, but everyone knew the truth. They were going to die here. In the barracks, Hana stood perfectly still while chaos erupted around her. Soldiers grabbed weapons, checking ammunition and power cells. Minho ran past, then stopped when he saw her standing motionless. Hana, come on, we need to get to defensive positions. She didn't move. Her eyes were distant, focused on something no one else could see. When she finally spoke, her voice was flat, empty of her usual warmth. There are too many. Standard defensive positions won't work. They'll breach the outer hull in 40 minutes, flood the corridors with boarding parties, and overwhelm us through numerical superiority. Everyone here will die. Minho stared at her. The way she said it, so calm and analytical, frightened him more than the alarms. Then what do we do? Hannah blinked, and something in her expression shifted. When she looked at Minho, her eyes were different. Still her eyes, but colder. Ancient. I need to speak with Commander Velther. She walked through the chaos with purpose, moving through panicked soldiers without seeming to notice them. Minho followed, uncertain what else to do. Velther saw her enter the command center. After reading her file, he understood now what he was looking at. The cheerful private was gone. In her place stood something that had once been called Phantom 7. Commander, she said, her voice military crisp. Request permission to deploy using full capabilities. Around the command center, officers turned to stare. Full capabilities? What did that mean? Velther had seconds to make a decision. The file had been clear. Hannah was psychologically damaged, unable to handle combat without severe trauma. Using her would destroy whatever progress she had made toward healing. But if he didn't, everyone on this station would die anyway. Permission granted. Hannah nodded once, then turned and left without another word. Doyan tried to follow her, tried to pull her back. Hannah, wait. You don't have to do this. We'll find another way. She looked at him with something like sadness. Lieutenant, I appreciate everything you've done for me. You've been kind. But there is no other way. There never was. She walked to the armory, and the soldiers there stepped back instinctively. Something about her presence had changed. She moved differently now, each step precise and controlled. She selected weapons that most soldiers couldn't even lift. A heavy plasma cannon designed for mounted positions. She picked it up one-handed. Close-range armor-piercing blades. A combat helmet with a cracked visor that someone had marked for disposal. Jiwan found her there. Hannah, talk to me. What are you doing? I'm doing what I was made to do, Hannah said quietly. I'm sorry. I wanted so badly to be the person you all thought I was. But that person was always just a dream. This is what's real. The first Krellian boarding pods hit the station's hull with thunderous impacts. Cutting lasers began slicing through metal. Within minutes, Krellian warriors would pour into the station's corridors. Hannah stood in the main corridor that led from the outer hull to the station's vital systems. She positioned herself at a choke point where the corridor narrowed. Behind her, defensive barricades had been erected, and soldiers took position to make a last stand. The bulkhead doors exploded inward. Krellian warriors, each standing nearly 7 feet tall in their combat armor, rushed through the breach. They moved in perfect formation, weapons ready, expecting to overwhelm the defenders through shock and numbers. Hannah was waiting for them. What happened next would be discussed in military academies for years afterward. Though most would never believe the reports. She moved like liquid violence. The heavy plasma cannon roared, each shot placed with surgical precision. Krellian shields shattered. Armor melted. The aliens pushed forward, confident in their superior numbers and training. They had fought humans before and respected them as warriors. But they had never fought something like this. Hannah dodged between their formations, too fast to track. She spoke in fluent Krellian, taunting them, exploiting their honor-based combat culture. Your formation is weak. Do you send children to fight for you? Where are the true warriors? Krellian culture demanded that insults be answered with single combat. Several warriors broke ranks to challenge her directly, disrupting their own tactical cohesion. Exactly as she intended, Doyan watched through security cameras, his mouth open in shock. What is she? Velther answered quietly. A weapon. One of the most effective humanity ever created. More Krellians poured in. 50 warriors filled the corridor. Hannah dropped the empty plasma cannon and drew her blades. What followed was brutal and efficient. She knew every weakness in Krellian armor. She understood their fighting style intimately. She moved through them like a surgeon cutting through diseased tissue. Behind the barricades, Coalition soldiers watched in stunned silence. Some raised their weapons to help, but couldn't get clear shots. She was moving too fast, always surrounded by enemies, yet somehow never hit. Minho stared at the monitors. She's been holding back this whole time. When she froze during combat, when she couldn't shoot. She wasn't scared. She was trying not to become this. The Krellian commander, watching through his own feeds, couldn't believe what he was seeing. His forces were being slaughtered in a narrow corridor by a single small human. He accessed Coalition personnel files, searching for identification. When her face appeared on his screen, recognition dawned. He sent an immediate communication on an open channel that both sides could hear. Phantom 7? We believed you dead. We mourned the warrior you were. The galaxy thought you had found peace. Hana's response, broadcast through her helmet speakers, was cold and empty. She is dead. I'm what's left. The station shook with another impact. More boarding pods. More warriors. They kept coming, and Hana kept fighting. She moved through 3 different breach points, appearing where the fighting was thickest, turning the tide each time. Her armor was scorched and damaged. Blood ran from a dozen wounds. But she didn't stop Dot in the command center. Velthur coordinated the defense, but everyone knew they were watching something historical. One human, damaged and broken by war, holding back an entire assault force through pure skill and desperate determination. Sir, the Krellian fleet is withdrawing, an officer reported. His voice filled with disbelief. On screen, the Krellian warships were pulling back. Inside the station, the remaining boarding parties retreated to their pods. They were leaving. Defeated Dot, the all-clear signal echoed through the station. The battle was over. Coalition forces had held. The cost in Krellian lives was staggering. Over 200 enemy soldiers dead or wounded. Coalition casualties. 17 wounded, 3 dead. The numbers were impossible, but the evidence filled every corridor. Hana stood in the main hallway, surrounded by bodies. Her weapons lay scattered around her. She had collapsed against a wall, sitting in a pool of blood that was partially her own. Her helmet had been removed, and tears ran down her face, mixing with the blood and dirt. When Dayun found her, she was sobbing uncontrollably. Her hands were shaking. The cold, efficient warrior was gone, replaced by someone shattered and horrified by what she had done. I didn't want to go back, she whispered between sobs. I didn't want to be her again. I was trying so hard. I just wanted to be normal. I just wanted to be Hana, who bakes cookies and has friends and doesn't. She couldn't finish. The weight of what she had become, what she had been forced to remember she could be, crushed her. Dayun sat down beside her, not caring about the blood or the bodies. He didn't say anything. He just sat there, another human presence in the darkness, letting her know she wasn't alone. Around the station, soldiers moved through corridors they had thought they would die defending. They stepped carefully around evidence of what one person could do when pushed beyond their breaking point. Some looked at Hana with fear now, others with awe, many with simple sadness, understanding that victory often came at costs that couldn't be measured in casualties. The sweet recruit who had joined their unit was gone. They had all seen what humanity created when it went to war, and the truth was more terrifying than any alien species could imagine. Humans didn't just fight. They made weapons out of their own children and called it necessary. In the command center, Velthur received a priority communication from Human Defense Command. The intelligence officers wanted to retrieve Hana immediately for evaluation and debriefing. Velther looked at the message for a long moment, then deleted it. He would deal with them later. Right now, a soldier under his command needed help, and he wasn't about to let anyone take her away after she had saved all their lives. The medical bay was quiet, except for the soft hum of equipment. Hannah lay in one of the beds, her physical wounds treated and healing. The psychological wounds were another matter entirely. She stared at the ceiling, her eyes hollow, as if looking at something far away that no one else could see. Dachi-1 changed her bandages with gentle hands. You saved us all, you know. I killed 247 people, Hannah whispered. I counted. I always count. You defended us. There's a difference, is there? Hannah's voice was flat. I saw their faces. One knew their names from their armor markings. I understood the words they spoke to each other. They weren't just targets. They were people. And I killed them efficiently, because that's what I was made to do. Commander Velther stood outside her room, watching through the window. Beside him stood two intelligence officers in their unmarked gray uniforms. They had arrived on a fast transport ship within hours of the battle's end. We need to take her back to the research facility, the taller officer said. She's clearly not ready for normal integration. The combat triggered a complete regression to her original programming. She saved this entire station, Velther responded coldly. Over 800 lives, including yours, since you're standing here breathing. That's not the point. The program was designed to help her become civilian. Using her combat abilities defeats the entire purpose. She needs to be removed from this environment and given proper treatment. Treatment? Velther's forearms crossed. Is that what you call isolating someone who desperately needs community? I read her file. I know what your program really is. An experiment to see if broken soldiers can be fixed by pretending they were never broken. The shorter officer stepped forward. You had no authorization to access those files, and you had no right to put a damaged soldier in my unit without informing me of her condition. We're done here. Private Park stays. The taller officer's expression hardened. Commander, you're overstepping your authority. We have orders signed by... I don't care whose signature is on your orders, Velther interrupted. This is a coalition station under military emergency protocols.